weekend, Americans were confronted with another wave of fatal mass shootings. A total of 29 people were killed in two separate shootings that occurred 13 hours apart. The first was at a shopping center in El Paso, Texas. The second was in Dayton, Ohio.
Two mass shootings in this country about 13 hours apart. First on Saturday, a massacre in El Paso, Texas. A 21-year-old gunman, terrorist, opened fire at a Walmart, killing at least 20 people and injuring at least 26. And then, as if that weren't horrifying enough, shortly after 1 a.m. on Sunday morning, a gunman opened fire outdoors in a Dayton, Ohio business and entertainment district, killing at least 9 innocent people and injuring 26.
Look, many Americans, myself included, have grown numb to these hideous acts of violence. They've become far too commonplace, and inaction is what we've been conditioned to expect. Any hope that things will change has been beaten out of us after every tragic shooting. In America, disingenuous thoughts and prayers substitute real action by our lawmakers because padding their greasy pockets with gun lobbyist cash is far more desirable than keeping people alive. Ironically, the same right-wing politicians who refuse to do anything about gun violence proudly boast their so-called pro-life credentials because they're always willing to assault women's reproductive rights. But let's call these politicians what they really are. They're spineless hypocrites. Following the Dayton shooting, Jake Tapper called out some of these Republican lawmakers.
Talk with at least 4 presidential candidates today about what they would do to stop this epidemic of mass shootings and shootings. We should note that we invited the Republican governor, lieutenant governor, and both Republican US senators representing Texas to join us this morning. They all declined. The Republican governor of Ohio also declined. We also asked the White House to provide someone to discuss these shootings. That request too was declined.
Spineless hypocrites. Tapper listed the Republican lawmakers who refused to be interviewed on Twitter, and his tweet called out the Texas governor, Greg Abbott, the lieutenant governor, Dan Patrick, Senator John Cornyn, Senator Ted Cruz, Governor Mike DeWine from Ohio. You have the House Minority Leader, Kevin McCarthy, and then of course the Senate Majority Leader. All of these people did not respond to Tapper's request. I want to take some time to talk about how much money each of those individuals has accepted from the National Rifle Association and or gun manufacturers. And then I'm going to do something that it seems like no one in the media ever calls out. I'm gonna show you how they're anti-life hypocrites who are far more interested in their own political careers and self-enrichment than keeping you safe. Let's start with Texas, whose Governor Greg Abbott has a long history of bragging about making guns easily accessible to anyone. In fact, back in 2014, he tweeted, quote, "I supported gun rights before the campaign began and have an A rating by the NRA as opposed to Wendy Davis, F rating. I'll keep Texas free." Oh, okay. I guess increasing the chances of a loved one getting shot up at a Walmart by a white supremacist is what Governor Abbott considers freedom. But he's right about one thing. The NRA certainly does love him and his ilk. In fact, had it not been for the NRA, Abbott might not have even been elected governor. According to writer Frank Smith over at The Progressive, what Abbott has not mentioned is that he owes part of his rise in Texas politics to the gun lobby. Back in 2002, 12 years before the NRA publicly endorsed him for governor, the gun lobby used a law enforcement front called the Law Enforcement Alliance of America to quietly help elect Abbott as Texas Attorney General. Abbott faced a tight race against Austin's popular mayor, Kirk Watson. It's important to note that the Law Enforcement Alliance of America was established in 1991 with a grant from the National Rifle Association and literally opened its office just 11 miles away from the NRA headquarters in Virginia. Shortly before the election, television ads paid for by the Law Enforcement Alliance of America appeared attacking Watson for allegedly being soft on crime and favoring Abbott, who was then a Texas Supreme Court justice, for supporting, quote, "the swift and aggressive prosecution of sexual predators and child pornographers." So the NRA helped Abbott win, and Abbott was more than willing to act as the NRA's puppet by signing anti-gun regulation bills into law when he eventually became governor. Governor Abbott recently signed one bill dropping the fee for a concealed carry permit in Texas to among the lowest in the country, joking about shooting reporters at the same time. In fact, while holding a bullet hole riddled target sheet, Abbott specifically said, quote, "I'm gonna carry this around in case I see any reporters." Abbott continues to flaunt his pro-gun stances. After Hurricane Harvey, he promptly announced that concealed carry permits lost or damaged in the storm would be replaced at no charge. Because that was the real issue that he needed to prioritize at that moment. Abbott is far from the only Republican politician who has received funding and support from the NRA, which essentially makes them indebted to the lobby's political agenda. Last year in February, the Washington Post broke down how much the NRA funded various politicians. The paper found that since 1998, the National Rifle Association has donated at least $4.1 million to current members of Congress. The Texas delegation has received more gun lobbyist donations than any other state. In fact, why don't we go down the list of Texas lawmakers and see just how much financial support they receive by the very lobbyists who successfully prohibit any talk or debate about gun legislation. So when it comes to the total gun lobby funding in Texas, you have Representative Pete Sessions, who's received a total of $158,000. Then you have Senator Ted Cruz, over $77,000. Senator John Cornyn, almost $60,000. Representative Mac Thornberry, $31,500. Kevin Brady, another representative from Texas, over $30,000. And then when you're looking at Ohio, the Republican lawmakers there seem to get quite a bit of campaign funding from the NRA as well. It's not like they fare any better. The total gun lobby funding in Ohio includes $105,000 for Representative Steve Cabot. Then you have Representative Steve Stivers, $30,300. Senator Rob Portman, $29,400. Representative Mike Turner, nearly $21,000. The money these lawmakers receive from the NRA not only influences their decision to prevent passage of common sense gun control, which most Americans are actually very supportive of, it also shapes their proposals to add more guns to the mix by arming more Americans.
Has anyone in this room noticed that shooting after shooting after shooting occurs in so-called gun-free zones? Look, if you're a lunatic, ain't nothing better to have a bunch of targets you know are gonna be unarmed.
Oh, wow, what a shocker. The Texas senator who gets paid by the NRA wants to arm more people following a mass shooting. Now, let's get to the hypocritical part of this whole equation. The very lawmakers in Texas and Ohio who refuse to take any action to prevent these mass shootings are the exact same politicians who also work extremely hard to roll back reproductive rights in the name of protecting life. Back in 2015, the state of Texas eliminated Medicaid funding toward Planned Parenthood, which only hurt the health and lives of Texans who use the clinics for their preventative care. Greg Abbott, the governor, claimed the move was to prevent taxpayer money from going toward abortions. But come on, guys, we all know that the Hyde Amendment prevents taxpayer money from being used to terminate a pregnancy. Earlier this year, the state of Ohio passed a fetal heartbeat bill, which effectively banned abortions as early as 6 weeks. A federal judge blocked it, but again, much like in Texas, Republican lawmakers in the state claimed they passed the draconian legislation in the name of protecting the lives of unborn babies. But what about the lives of Jordan and Andre Achinado, who were at Walmart with their 2-month-old when the gunshots broke out? Their infant is now an orphan. Jordan was only 24 years old and Andre was 23. But I guess their lives just don't matter enough to take action, right? Thoughts and prayers. A 15-year-old named Javier Rodriguez also died in the El Paso shooting. Does his life matter at all? How about the lives that were lost in Dayton, Ohio?
9 people were killed, including the shooter's own 22-year-old sister, Megan. All of them, mostly African-American, from their mid-20s to age 57, gunned down on the street or sidewalk. Examples of the damage an assault weapon can do in seconds.
The reason politicians have all these conflicting messages and hypocritical stances on life and death issues is because we let them. They are a reflection of who we are and how easily we're hoodwinked by people who have no commitment to anyone other than themselves and their own political careers. They pretend to care about abortions to win evangelical votes, and then they prevent the passage of gun laws to appease their NRA funders. It's time to hold these slimy politicians accountable because they're not representing our best interests. Gallup polling shows that the majority of Americans actually want stricter gun laws. Last October, 61% of Americans said they want gun regulations. A Reuters Ipsos poll from February finds that 85% of Americans report being concerned over gun violence in the United States, and 65% of parents are worried about sending their child to school because of gun violence. A Quinnipiac poll from March found that 60% of Americans support stricter gun laws in the United States, up from 56% when the question was asked in April of last year. But our politicians aren't listening to us. It's about time we made them. Otherwise, we're gonna keep dealing with clowns like Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, who turns to any ridiculous scapegoat to deflect from the real issues at hand.
Should we be surprised in this nation? We have devalued life, whether it's through abortion, whether it's the breakup of families, through violent movies, and particularly violent video games, which now outsell movies and music.
Well, I agree with him that we've devalued life. We've done it at the border, where 24 migrants have died in US custody, and they continue to be dehumanized, they continue to be brutalized, and people like Dan Patrick like to make excuses for it. He devalues life. He doesn't care about lives, and he certainly doesn't care about our lives. We all know what the real problem is. It's these corrupt politicians who couldn't care less about what happens to us, what type of life we live. It's time to get politically active, primary these pathetic weasels, and vote them out of their unearned positions of power. Did you know that TYT Network is now available on YouTube's new streaming platform, YouTube TV? Get access to full TYT episodes and exclusive shows by signing up for YouTube TV today. All new subscribers get a 7-day free trial, so head over to youtube.tv and search for the TYT Network channel.